بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. أبان مورده عن طيب عنصره، أبان مورده عن طيب عنصره، يا طيب مبتدأ منه ومختتم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. يوم تفرس فيه الفرس أنهم، يوم تفرس فيه الفرس أنهم قد أنذروا بحلول البؤوس والنقام، قد أنذروا بحلول البؤوس والنقام. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. وبات أيوان كسرى وهو منصدع، وبات أيوان كسرى وهو منصدع، كشمل أصحاب كسرى غير ملوتائم، كشمل أصحاب كسرى غير ملوتائم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. والنار خامدة الأنفاس من أسف، والنار خامدة الأنفاس من أسف عليه، والنهر ساهل العين من تدام عليه، والنهر ساهل العين من تدام. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. أنغضت بحيرتها، وأنغضت بحيرتها، ورد واردها بالغيظ حين ضمي، ورد واردها بالغيظ حين ضمي. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. كأن بالماء من بلل، كأن بالنار بالماء من بلل، حزنا وبالماء ما بالنار من ضرم، حزنا وبالماء ما بالنار من ضرم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. والجن تهتف والأنوار ساطعة، والجن تهتف والأنوار ساطعة، والحق يظهر من معنى ومن كلم، والحق يظهر من معنى ومن كلم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. عموا وصموا فإعلان البشائر لم، عموا وصموا فإعلان البشائر لم يسمع، وبارقة الإنذار لم تشمي، يسمع وبارقة الإنذار لم تشمي. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. من بعد ما أخبر الأقوام كاهنهم، من بعد ما أخبر الأقوام كاهنهم بأن دينهم المعوج لم يقم، بأن دينهم المعوج لم يقم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. Most respected elders, friends, beloved mu'takifin, mothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is the 4th chapter of Qaseedah Burdah. It is titled as Faslun fi Mawladin Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The chapter about the Mubarak birth, the blessed birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the previous chapter, Allama Busairi rahmatullahi in praises of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam states, "Lawla lam takhruj ad-dunya min al-adami." Had it not been because of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the world would never have come out from non-existence to existence. In other words, the Mubarak birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is central to the purpose of creating this world. And in fact, we could also say that it was the most singular, greatest event that has taken place on the face of this earth. There wasn't anything as great as the Mubarak birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everybody is unanimous that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born on a Monday. In the hadith in Muslim Sharif, a hadith is mentioned, Su'ila Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam an yawmi isnain. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked about a Monday. Any virtue, any value, any significance of Monday. Generally, we have a misconception of Blue Mondays. After a long weekend, when a person has to go to work, the person feels groggy and he calls it a Blue Monday. But for us as Muslims, we start Monday in a positive way. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked about a Monday. So among the virtues of Monday, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned that ذَلِكَ يَوْمٌ وُلِدْتُ فِيهِ. That is that day, that Monday in which I was born. It's a day of virtue, it's a day of significance. Everybody is also unanimous that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born in the month of Rabiul Awwal, the third month of the lunar calendar. And according to the Gregorian calendar, it was in the year 571. As far as the date of the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is concerned, it is commonly known, more popular, that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born on the 12th of Rabiul Awwal. From the academic point of view, this is attributed to a famous historian whom even Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi says very often in Kitab al-Maghazi, in the second volume, he quotes Muhammad ibn Ishaq rahmatullahi. He states that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born on the 12th of Rabiul Awwal. Whereas, this has not been supported by any chain of narrators and through any authenticity. The more correct version, from the research point of view, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born on the 9th of Rabiul Awwal. The reason for that is, there was no Monday of the Rabiul Awwal of the year 571 that have fallen on the 12th of Rabiul Awwal. Most of the commentators and most of the researchers are of the view that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born on the 9th of Rabiul Awwal, and in the early part of the morning, approximately 4:30 a.m. At Subah Sadiq time, so we can say that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam came into the world. As though the world was coming out from darkness to brightness, at the same time, the real darkness was coming out and the real brightness was now being ushered into the dunya. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born in the house, which is now known as the Maktaba, close to the Haram Sharif, just outside the Haram Sharif. It's the Maktaba, or rather a library. That's the birthplace of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. According to the Gregorian calendar, the birth of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was on the 20th of April. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born in the season of spring, and in the Arab Peninsula, spring comes in April. Allama Busairi rahmatullahi refers to various miracles that have taken place at the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is mentioned in one hadith. Uthman ibn Abi al-As radiallahu ta'ala narrates from his mother. She says, Annaha Hazrat Amina. When Hazrat Amina radiallahu ta'ala anha, when she was about to give birth, so Uthman ibn Abi al-As's mother was there by Hazrat Amina radiallahu ta'ala anha. So she says, her observations, فَجَعَلْتُ أَنْظُرُ إِلَى النُّجُومِ تَدَلَّى. When I looked up toward the skies, it appeared as though the stars were actually bowing down in sajda, the stars were actually falling down. And she says that, حَتَّى أَقُولُ لَتَقَعَنَّ عَلَيْهِ. It appears as though the way the stars were bending towards the earth, as though the stars are now going to fall on the earth. فَلَمَّا وُلِدَتْ. When she gave birth to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, خَرَجَ مِنْهَا نُورٌ, that such nur came out from the house at that time, that أَضَاءَ لَهُ الْبَيْتُ وَالدَّارِ. Nur, light, celestial light filled up the entire house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And why not so? When that very same light is to fill the entire world with nur and light. Allama Busayri rahmatullahi, he refers to many other miracles that have taken place just before the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are various types of miracles. One is called a mu'jiza. A mu'jiza is that miracle, something supernatural, something unique, something that is out of principle and out of norm of life, that is conducted by the hand of a Nabi. Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala refers to many miracles of the prophets in the Quran Kareem. That if a miracle is performed by a non-Nabi, a wali of Allah, and that is called karamat. In the books of Aqidah it is mentioned, karamatul awliya haqqun. The karamat of the awliya, they are haqq, they are true, we believe in them. On condition, he is a real wali of Allah, otherwise not a fake. And then there is another miracle that is called irhas, with a sword. Irhas literally means a foundation. And these are those miracles that have taken place at the birth of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or before the birth of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as though by divine design, by divine order, Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala established a foundation of the coming of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allama Busayri rahmatullahi would refer to approximately 6 such miracles that have taken place at the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It probably may be appropriate for me to also discuss the concept of celebrating birthdays. The origin of celebrating birthdays, in the past, people used to live very harsh conditions. So many catastrophes, and it was a challenge for people to live on. So it was as though people had to fight nature and in order to survive. So upon the completion of 1 year, they would celebrate victory against nature and being able to survive against the odds of nature. This is the origin of celebrating birthdays. And in Islam, we live in harmony with nature. And if anything has to happen, then we believe that it is by divine design, divine order. إِذَا جَاءَ أَجَلْهُمْ لَا يَسْتَأْخِرُونَ السَّاعَةَ وَلَا يَسْتَقْدِمُونَ. When your time comes to leave the dunya, it's not that nature has killed you. It is actually by divine design, by the order of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And our concept of passing 1 year of our life is that we don't celebrate, and it's not like we have gained victory over nature, but it is actually that we're supposed to be pondering, reflecting 1 more year closer to a qabr, 1 more year closer to a qabr, and probably the past year we have wasted it in disobeying Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. So this is not the time, 1 year of your life, it is not the time for us to celebrate. It is actually a time for us to cry, for us to reflect, for us to ponder that where are we going with life. It is time for us to make tawbah. As far as Milad is concerned, and celebrating the Mubarak birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is something we celebrate every single day of our life. And every single moment of our life, we celebrate the Milad, the birth of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with implementing the Sunnah of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam in every aspect of our life. And in fact, it is safe to say that the personality of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam is too great, too powerful for his personality to be celebrated for just 1 day of his life. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam's personality is such, we're supposed to be celebrating it every single moment of our life, every single day of our life. Allama Busayri rahmatullahi proceeds and he states, Abana mawliduhu am tibi unsirihi, ya tiba mubtada'im minhu wa mukhtatami. Unsur refers to the origin. The translation is, the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam expressed, it showed the pure origin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How pure is his beginning and how pure is his ending. In these two poems, Allama Busayri rahmatullahi refers to the purity of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Before the advent and before the coming of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the world, all around, the north, the south, the west, the east, the center, was infested and saturated with every form of evil, the worst of which was kufr and shirk. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam is pure, and Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to remove all impurities, and most importantly, to remove the impurity, the najasat, the dirt of kufr and shirk from this world, and fill this entire world with purity, with tawheed, and with a beautiful way of life. يوم تفرس فيه الفرس أنهم قد أنذروا بحلول البؤوس والنقم. Tafarras is from the scale of tafa'ul, which means to perceive. And what eloquence Allama Busayri displays, he says al-furus. Furus refers to the Farsi people, the Persian people. As though the Persian people, the Farsi people are those people that are supposed to have farasat in them, and they're supposed to have insight and basirat in them. In the second poem, Bu'uz, it refers to misfortune, and Naqami, it refers to punishment. The translation is that on the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Farsi people, the Persian people, they perceived that they are being warned with coming of a misfortune and with coming of a punishment. At that time, at the time of the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were two empires of the world: the Persian Empire and the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire wasn't as big and as powerful as the Persian Empire, and this is also indicated in the Quran Kareem, Alif Lam Mim Ghulibatir Rum. In the 21st juz of the Quran Kareem, Allah Tabaraka speaks about how the Romans have been defeated by the Persian Empire. So that shows indication the Persian Empire was a very powerful empire at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, at that time, the Persian people, with the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is as though by divine order, by divine design, they were being warned, they were being told that their empire is about to crumble. And a great misfortune according to their understanding. Otherwise, for the entire world, it was a fortune for Nabi Kareem coming to dunya, but in relation for them, it was a misfortune because the empire is about to crumble. وَبَاتَ أَيْوَانُ كِسْرَى وَهُوَ مُنْصَدِعُ كَشَمْلِ أَصْحَابِ كِسْرَى غَيْرَ مُلْتَئِنِ. Munsadi'u, it means to crumble. And Aywan, it refers to the palaces. Kisra is a title given to a Persian king. And at that time, at the time of the birth of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the name of the Persian king was Noshirwa. And in the second poem, Shaml and Ashab, it refers to the army and it refers to the associates of Kisra. Multa'im, it is from the scale of ifti'al, something that is not going to recover, something that is not going to recuperate, something that's never going to come back. The translation is that at the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the walls of the palace of Kisra spent the night whilst the walls were crumbled. Like how the army of Kisra was disintegrated, never to be united again. A background of these poems, that, as I mentioned, the Persian Empire was a very, very powerful empire, ruling almost major portions of the world. Now we are talking about such an empire. We are not talking or relating it like the empires of today. The empires of today in relation to the empires of the past was nothing. The empires of the past was more powerful and greater rule over the world. And it was the Persian Empire at the time of the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allama Busairi rahmatullahi refers to that just before the night, or just before the birth of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the night before the birth of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a zalzala, an earthquake that had taken place. And that palace of Kisra, which was a very, very powerful, huge palace, it is stated that it was almost 100 meters high, palace 100 meters high, and it took Kisra, being the king, with all the resources at his disposal, and started from before the time, that almost 90 years, to build such a huge palace. And it was decorated and adorned with gold from outside, let aside what was inside the palace. Hazrat Mufti Taqi Osmani Sahab, Daman Barakatuhum, in his book, Jahadida, where in the English translation, that visited the world or seen the world, in that book of his, he speaks about the various travels in the various parts of the world, and he speaks about his travels to Iraq. He says that he went to a place, Madain, in Iraq, right at the borders of Madain. That is where there is one wall remaining of that wall of Kisra, of the palace of Kisra. He says that even when you look at it now, after thousands of years passing by, you can see how great, how huge structure it is. And he said that when you entered to one place, there was like a huge hall in the center, as though that was the main hall. So Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala has kept that palace, one part of the palace, for us to see, فَأَتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبَصَارِ, so that we may seek ibrat, so we seek lesson. Huge empires have come to see what has happened of them. In fact, there was a Muslim ruler by the name of Mansur. He wanted to actually break that wall down. So one of his ministers advised him that don't break that wall down. That wall, it represents a huge lesson for the ummah. That when Allah's madad comes, Allah's nusrat comes, that Allah helps the Muslims out. And Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was coming, and the entire wall and the entire palace being broken down and being destroyed is actually divine help from the side of Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. So Allama Busairi says that the night before Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam could be born, an earthquake took place, and this huge powerful palace of Kisra, and it stated it had approximately 14 pillars, huge powerful 14 pillars to keep up that palace. That all just crumbled. It was unexpected, never thought of, and it was beyond the understanding, beyond the comprehension, that how such a huge, powerful, magnificent, gigantic palace happened to fall down. And then he likens this and he says that this is like how the army of Kisra disintegrated. Now one can understand that it was the greatest empire of the world, ruling the major portion of the world. What could be the extent of the empire of the the army of the Persian Empire? So he speaks about how the Persian army have completely disintegrated. This is irhas. This is a miracle. This is by divine design, divine order. Allah is giving a message to the world that now no army is going to survive. It is only the army of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the army of Islam, that is now going to survive. Now just to shed some historical facts behind this. Firstly, as I indicated earlier, the two empires, the Persian Empire, the Roman Empire, they used to be in war against each other, as the norm of time, history has shown it. that every empire was to compete with another empire. Today too, we also find it. There was a time where, during our time, that probably we spoke about the Russian Empire. Then after we saw the Russian Empire is gone, there's also other empires, and whatever the empire of today, that is going to go, and tomorrow there's going to be another empires. Ultimately, lillahi al-wahid al-qahhar, is going to the empire of Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Everything belongs to Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. So, the Russian Empire, or the Persian Empire, defeated the Roman Empire. And this is indicated in the Quran Kareem. But apart from that, such a huge, powerful empire, the Persian Empire, how did it finally crush? And how did it come to an end? In the 6th year after Hijrat, after the migration of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Madinatul Munawwara, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to go and perform Umrah with the Sahaba. Allah refers to it in the Quran Kareem, لَقَدْ صَدَقَ اللَّهُ رَسُولَهُ الرُّؤْيَا بِالْحَقِّ لَتَدْخُلُنَّ الْمَسْجِدَ الْحَرَامِ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ آمِنِينَ مُحَلِّقِينَ رُؤُوسَكُمْ وَمُقَصِّرِينَ. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw a dream that they're entering into the state of Ihram. They going into the Haram and they have removed their hair, and some of them even shortened the hair. This is in the Quran Kareem. At that time, the kuffar of Makkah Mukarramah stopped the advancement of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and put a condition that must come the following year. And one of the conditions was that now they're not going to fight with each other. That's the time where the doors opened up for da'wah. So Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam decided to write letters to various kings inviting them to Islam. One of the letters Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam wrote was to the Persian king, Noshirwa, at that time, inviting him to Islam. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent the letter with Hazrat Abdullah ibn Huzafa radiallahu ta'ala anhu. When the letter of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the letter of invite to Islam, when it came to Noshirwa, obviously he is the king of the most powerful empire of the world. One can understand the pride, the arrogance that you would have in him. So when he opened the letter and he saw that he is being invited, he is being asked to submit to someone besides him, to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, submit to Allah and accept Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a Nabi of Allah, being the most powerful person in the world, pride and arrogance got the better of him, and he tore the Mubarak letter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's when Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard about this, made dua, Allahumma mazzikhu kulla mumazzak. He tore my letter, Allah, you tear his empire apart. And it so happened how the empire of the Persian Empire crumbled and how it got torn in a most disgraceful and a most humiliating way. After this, Noshirwa got so angry that he had his representative or governor, so to say, or minister or representative in Yemen by the name of Bazan. He sent a message to Bazan, who's this Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that's telling me to submit to him? Send 2 powerful people to capture him and bring him to me. So 2 people, clean shaven, they came to Madinatul Munawwara. When they saw Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they became mar'oob, confounded. They couldn't even bear the robe of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Where they going to catch Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and take Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as though the Sahaba would permit that. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam looked at them and told them that, where's your people's beard? They say, our king told us to remove the beard. Our Rabb, referring to our king, told us to remove the beard. So Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam told that my Rabb, my king told me to keep a beard. Anyway, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam told these 2 people that Qatala Rabbi Rabbak. My Rabb, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, killed your Rabb, referring to your leader, referring to Noshirwa. What had happened? There was a confrontation between the father and the son. The Persian, imagine, people think that they're sitting on empires, but what happened in the personal life is something that they don't enjoy any peace and any comfort. So, Noshirwa's son's name was Sherwiya. Noshirwa got married to a very beautiful woman at that time by the name of Shireen. The son now fell in love with the father's wife. That means Sherwiya now fell in love with the father's wife. That was the type of life that they were living. So, just to get that woman to get his father's wife, he now attempted to kill his father. And his father also perceived that his son is going to go kill him. So what the father did before becoming a victim of his son's killing, plotting and assassination, he took a bottle, filled it up with poisonous, deadly poison, and he put on top of the bottle, he wrote on top of the bottle that this medicine is very good for potency. He put it inside the cupboard. Finally, Sherwiya killed Noshirwa, and then he wanted to get married to Shirin. That is his father's wife. So after the death of his father, he opened the cupboard and he found that bottle there, that it is written there, very good for potency. He thought, probably this is what my father was taking, so he decided to take it. And when he took it, that deadly poison also killed him. So father died, son also died. And then after that, the swords started crossing with each other. This person fighting with that person fighting, until a time came that there wasn't a single male to rule the Persian Empire. And now a time came where that empire had to be given over to the rule of a woman. That's when Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned, لَن يَفْلَحَ قَوْمٌ وَلَّوْ أَمْرَهُمْ إِمْرَأَةً. That nation can never be successful to hand over the matter over to a woman. So this is how the Persian Empire have come to an end. And besides that, completely crumbled, that at the time of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala, in the 14th year after Hijrat, Umar radiallahu ta'ala sent Hazrat Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu ta'ala with a huge army, and finally they took over the Persian Empire, and that is why Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu ta'ala is known as the Fatih of Faris. He is known as the conqueror of the Persian Empire. So, Allama Busayri rahmatullahi, in the most eloquent way, in few words, he indicates to a great historical perspective, كَشَمْلِ أَصْحَابِ كِسْرَى غَيْرَ مُلْتَئِنِ. Like how the army of Kisra was disintegrated, never to be united again. وَالنَّارُ خَامِدَةُ الْأَنْفَاسِ مِنْ أَسَفٍ عَلَيْهِ وَالنَّهْرُ صَاهِ الْعَيْنِ مِنْ سَدَمِ. Khamida literally means for the fire to go off. Asab refers to regret. Sahil Ain refers to eyes that have been awake. Sleepless eyes, like how everybody stayed awake last night and then you can see some of the eyes right now. They are Sahil Ain, that sleepless eyes. Min Sadamin, and Sadamin refers to sorrow. In this, Allama Busayri rahmatullahi, he refers to another miracle. The translation is that, and the fire of the Persians, it took a cool breath out of regret. While the rivers of Persia had sleepless eyes from excessive sorrow. Again, Allama Busayri rahmatullahi refers to two miracles that took place upon the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Persians, they were fire worshippers. And a particular fire was burning for almost 1,000 years. Yes, of course, from the administrative point of view, that they had people responsible to keep that fire burning all the time. All the time there were people around the fire. It was as though that fire was their God. They used to worship that fire, but it was an ajib God where somebody has to look after it for you to stay awake. Whereas our Allah is such, la ta'khuduhu sinatu wa la nawm. So, they used to worship this fire for thousands of years. Now, it so happened that the night when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was about to be born, Zalzala, an earthquake took place, the Persian palace fell down, and automatically this entire fire also went off. So as though Allama Busayri is saying that fire, it took a cool breath. That means that it went completely off. And that fire of 1,000 years, that it went completely off, and it is as though the fire is now regretting that it was alive for so long, how come it died suddenly. So, وَالنَّارُ خَابِدَةُ الْأَنْفَاسِ مِنْ أَسَفِ. And the second part, he refers to وَالنَّهْرُ صَاهِ الْعَيْنِ مِنْ سَدَمِ. There was the Euphrates. You get the two famous rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris. The Euphrates, it was the main water supply of the Persian people at that time. So that water, that stream, around that, there were quite a few synagogues and there were other places of worship of the Persians. That entire stream, it also dried up completely. So, وَالنَّهْرُ سَاهِ الْعَيْنِ مِنْ سَدَمِ, as though the rivers of Persia, they have sleepless nights and they dried up out of sorrow. وَسَاءَ سَاوَى أَنْ غَاضَتْ بُحَيْرَتُهَا وَرُدَّ وَارِدُهَا بِالْغَيْظِ حِينَ الْغَمِ. Sawa, Allama Busayri refers to a stream or refers to a river that was between, in those days it was Rai, present day Tehran, the capital of Iran, Tehran. At that time the name was Rai. And in the Kitab they normally refer to a place called Rai. It refers to actually Tehran. So between Tehran and Hamazan, there was a lake by the name of Sawa. And around the lake was all the place of worship of the Persian people. That also suddenly dried up. So Allama Busayri says that Sawa, which is the lake that was between Rai, between Tehran and Hamazan, it became grief-stricken with the drying up of its lake. That lake is now no more there for it to sustain the fire worshippers. And he presents that as though there was a thirsty water bearer, because that was a lake that used to supply the needs of the people. So the water bearer who was thirsty, when he went to fetch water from the lake, after this incident when the lake dried up, that he had returned with anger and with disappointment. In other words, that now the time for kufr, the time for shirk has now come up to an end. In the second poem, the word Rami is mentioned, but it is actually Ramiya. The ya has been dropped out because of tawazun, to maintain the rhyming in poetry. كَأَنَّ بِالنَّارِ مَا بِالْمَاءِ مِنْ بَلَدِ حُزْنًا وَبِالْمَاءِ مَا بِالنَّارِ مِنْ ضَرَمِ. Now further speaking about how that lake of Sawa, it dried up. It is as though the fire, that means the fire that was burning for 1,000 years, when it went off, it is as though the fire became wet like water. Which means that fire was the object of worship, it went off and it is no more there. It is as though fire became water. Completely non-existent. And he further mentions that, and as though the water became blazing fire due to grief. Barami refers to grief. In other words, that water supply that was there of Sawa, that water is not there. When you have water, you can put up water, you can put up fire. But now the water is not there, as though that there is fire that is blazing. Because that water have dried up. The 13th poem, Allama Busayri says, وَالْجِنُّ تَهْتِفُ وَالْأَنْوَارُ سَاطِعَةٌ وَالْحَقُّ يَظْهَرُ مِنْ مَعْنَى وَمِنْ كَلَمِ. Tahtif refers to making sounds. And the jinn was shouting. The jinn was calling out and telling the people about the appearance of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the nur of the birth of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was now spreading in the horizons. And the truth that refers to nubuwwat, haqq, the truth was now getting exposed with internal and external issues. In these poems, Allama Busayri rahmatullahi refers to another miracle. In the time of Jahiliyyah, or right before the birth of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the jinnat were able to go up toward the skies. And Allah refers to it in the Quran Kareem. When Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala gives an order to the Malaika, then the Malaika of the 7 heavens pass it over to the 6th heaven, then to the 5th, then the 4th, right until it comes to the 1st heaven. So the jinnat, they used to go up to the first heaven and try to steal information. And pass the information over to the fortune tellers. Now people would go to fortune tellers and ask them to predict their life in the future. And from with 99 lies, they probably would put one truth. The people's focus would be on the one truth and think that what the fortune teller is saying is truth. This information was fed by the jinnat. The information they got from the skies. That's why Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have mentioned, Man ata kahinan falaysa minna. That person who goes to a fortune teller is not from among us. Many people also have a tendency, sometime in the newspapers, they like to look at the prediction of the stars. What is it look like this year, January? What does it look like in February? What fate is in store for me in this? What the stars read? That's kufr. That is shirk, and it's completely haram to even read that. If people are going to challenges in life, then you don't resort to the stars, you turn to Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Halat and conditions, they come from Allah. Everything is by divine design, and everything is by the order of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. So what is mentioned there in the reading of the stars is also a type of that prediction from the side of kufr and from the side of shirk. So, Allama Busayri rahmatullahi refers to this, that in the time of Jahiliyyah, the jinnat were able to go up to the skies. And upon the birth of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah appointed the malaika to take stones, to take the stars and throw it at the shayateen. If it hits the shaitan on the head, shaitan dies. And if it doesn't hit the shaitan on the head, somewhere anywhere else, then the shaitan probably will survive, but probably will be badly paralyzed. And the falling stars that we see is actually the effect of that. From the scientific point of view, we'll probably give some other explanation. However, how Allah created the world is a conjunction between that asbab and between the hikmat and wisdom of Almighty Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. So, when the jinnat were now repelled, trying to go up to the sky, then they were sent back. Now they announced to the world, wal jinnu tahtib. The jinn were now talking to the world, something unique have taken place. Something ajib, peculiar taken place, that for thousands of years from inception of the world, we're able to steal information from the skies. Why is it not happening anything? Why it's not happening now? Why are we being sent back? Something very unique and something very great have taken place, as though the jinnat were telling to the people. And then there's indication of that in the Quran Kareem. Inna sami'na Qur'anan ajaba yahdi ila rushdi fa'amanna bi walan nushrika bi rabbina ahada. That the jinnat, they consulted with each other and they decided to scan the entire world to see what unique incident took place for which we are being stopped access to the skies. One group of jinnat that was appointed in the Arab Peninsula, they happened to pass through Uqqas. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was reciting the Quran Kareem, and they said, this is it. That it is because of this Rasul of Allah sent, that we have been now repelled from the skies and we are unable to go back to our skies. And that is when the jinnat themselves, when they heard Nabi Kareem reading Fajr Namaz in this bazaar, in this souk, they said, what beautiful reading. Inna sami'na Qur'anan ajaba yahdi ila rushd fa'amanna bi. One time the jinnat heard the Quran Kareem, immediately they were told that we bring iman, and they go back and they now immediately, just by listening to the tilawat of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they became da'is and they went back and they invited their nation to come into the fold of Islam. So Allama Busayri refers to that, and then finally he says, Ammu wa sammu fa'a'lanul bashair lam yasma' wa bariqatil inzari lam tashumi. See, the kuffar, they became blind. The kuffar, they became deaf to the announcement of glad tidings. They did not even hear the lightning of the warning that was seen by them. All the signs, indications were given to them. The Persian Empire crushing. The lake of Sawa drying up. The jinnat are being repelled. All these are clear signs by divine signs from Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, and they still didn't take heed. They didn't listen. It as though summun bukmun umyun fahum la yarjun. They became blind, they became deaf, they become dumb, and that is why they were never ever guided. This is min ba'di ma akhbar al-aqwama kahinuhum bi anna dinuhum al-mu'awwaj lam yakumi. In the second poem, mu'awwaj, this is from the scale of taf'il, and is derived from the root word iwaj. Iwaj means crooked, and mu'awwaj means the crookedness. The translation is as though their fortune tellers have informed the people, after seeing all these miraculous incidents, that their crooked religion would never remain, and the crooked religion will never be able to sustain itself. Most respected elders, friends, mothers, sisters in Islam that are listening to this program, one very important spiritual lesson that we learn from this. The last part of the poems, where Allama Busairi speaks about the Roman people, Persian people, the kuffar, the mushrikeen at that time, ammu wa sammu. As though they were blind, they were deaf. They did not want to listen to the haqq, they did not want to accept the haqq. Any one of us, we want to climb the ladder of ruhaniyat. We want to climb the ladder of spirituality. You only need to do one thing. Listen. If you listen, then automatically everything else is going to respond. If you're going to listen, now the limbs of your body are going to respond according to that. Your heart is going to respond according to that. But if you don't listen, then you can never expect guidance. So one single quality that we need to create in ourselves for our hidayat, for our guidance, and for our spiritual upliftment, create the attitude of listening in us. The Persian people didn't listen. That was the cause of the destruction and the disaster. And if you look at the Quran Kareem, there's so much of emphasis on this point alone, listening. Listen. Allah gave us ears to listen. Our ears are not there for nothing. And that's why Allah condemned the kuffar. Summum bukmun umyun fahum la yarjun. They didn't listen. And because they didn't listen, that was the cause of the destruction and disaster. Allah tells in the Quran Kareem, in Surah Al-A'raf, 2 verses after that is a sajda. And there's a hikmah of that sajda. إِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنْصِتُوا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. When the Quran Kareem is being read, listen attentively. Allah don't say listen. Allah says listen attentively. Give it your complete attention to the Quran Kareem. Quran is a book of guidance. But that alone is not sufficient for guidance until there's no cooperation from your side. We need the kitab is there. Now you need to make use of it by you to listen to it. Otherwise, if the Quran alone were a means of guidance, all the kuffar of that time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would have become Muslims. But they themselves didn't listen. And after that, Allah speaks about people making tasbih, zikr of Allah Ta'ala. And then, Surah Al-A'raf, it ends up with a sajda. And the point that I want to make where Allah says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ إِبَادَتِهِ. That there are certain people who don't make takabbur. This is in response to those people who don't listen. Those people who listen, then they don't have pride. It's a sign of humbleness and humility. And in one verse of the Quran Kareem, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala speaks about the kuffar. On the day of Qiyamah, the kuffar will be asked, مَا سَلَكَكُمْ فِي سَقَرٍ? How come you ended up here in the fire of hell? So the kuffar will say, لَوْ كُنَّا نَسْمَعْ أَوْ نَعْقِلْ. Had we only heard, Allah created his ears, had we only heard with his ears, then we would never have been in this place of destruction, we would never have been in the fire of hell. And in Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah speaks about Surah Al-Baqarah, so many ahkam, so many laws, and then fundamental issues of belief. Right at the ending, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala says that the mu'mineen are such, sami'na wa ata'na. Believers are such, where they say, sami'na, we have heard, we obey. From this we understand, listening, it is a shi'ar, and it is the outstanding quality of feature of the mu'mineen. We listen, we get guidance. We listen, we can go into the rahmat and the mercy of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And in one verse of the Quran Kareem, Allah says, فَبَشِّرْ عِبَادِ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلِ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ. Give glad tidings to my servants. And my servants, Allah refers to يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلِ, who listen attentively. That shows that when somebody is giving you advice, somebody is giving some goodness here, to listen properly, you become among the safe, you become among the special servants of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. In one hadith, it is mentioned. The hadith is in Mishkat Sharif, Bukhari Sharif also, that Ubadah ibn Samit radiallahu ta'ala speaks about bay'at, pledge, that bay'ana Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ala sam'i wa ta'a. We took bay'at on the hand of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to listen and to obey. And when a person doesn't listen, what's the consequences? It happened also to the Sahaba. The Battle of Uhud, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made 50 Sahaba stand on the mountain. Whatever happens, victory or defeat, never move away from there. And Hazrat Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was kept in charge, he was the Amir. But when there was initial victory and people started going for the booty, so there was some of the Sahaba said, no, we should go. The war came to an end. Hazrat Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala told, Allah the Rasul told that we must remain here, we have to listen to the Rasul of Allah. But then, they didn't listen, that victory turned out to be a defeat. That listening is so important. And it also happened in our own lives also. You got a flu, you got a fever, you got some physical problem, you got some health-related problem. You go to a doctor, and the doctor tells you, listen, you must do this, you must do that, you must do this, you must do that, and after 2 weeks you must come and see me. Now after 2 weeks you go back for a checkup and the doctor sees the condition is the same. First thing the doctor will ask, you took medicine? No, I didn't take medicine. You decided not to listen and you expect to get cured? Even that's for a medical condition, so how can we be cured from a spiritual ailment when we don't listen to a doctor? For physical ailment you can't be cured, for spiritual ailment where can we be cured? Likewise, when you come to a legal wrangle, you're stuck, you don't know what to do. Now, you want to go and represent yourself in the court in front of the magistrate, you don't even know the law, then you can never chance, you can never think of surviving. Illa mashallah. Now, if your lawyer tells you, you're a person who knows the law, that do this, do that. You listen to him, you stand chance. But you don't listen to him, if anything goes wrong, the lawyer will tell you, see, you didn't listen. You didn't listen, that is why this has happened. Yes, of course, I do understand that sometimes you have to take up your own lawyers too. Sometimes, you'll listen to your mechanic. You're driving a car. It happened to me one time I was driving and that heat gauge, it went up. And I saw it was going up very, very fast. So quickly I contacted my mechanic. I said, what must I do? I saw the garage is going nearby and maybe I'll just carry on driving up till there. He told me, stop immediately. I didn't listen. I thought, wait, you stop right here in the center of the highway, garage is nearby, let me drive there. And no sooner I went there, the whole car stopped. You listen to a mechanic. So likewise, when you have to listen to a mechanic, you have to listen to a doctor, you have to listen to a lawyer. So are we not supposed to listen to Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala? When we listen, then we get guidance. You don't listen, you don't get guidance. We know that famous incident, I told it many, many times, that one person was fishing. He took a sardine and he put it inside a hook and he was fishing. And then there was a small fish that wanted to come for that sardine. So a big fish told to a small fish, don't go. I understand what is behind that small fish. There is one small silver hook inside there. You'll bite, you'll enjoy it, and then finally you'll get hooked up. So a small fish told a big fish, it looks like you are jealous for me. That because you can't eat it, I'm having it, I'm enjoying it, you can't enjoy it, you don't want me to have it. So a big fish pleaded to small fish, listen to me. I'm telling you that you're going to eat that thing, you're going to be caught up in it. You're going to be killed, you'll be taken away. There's a line there that will pull you out of the ocean. As small fish did well listen and kept on nibbling until the fisherman hooked it. And the big fish looks in regret, had he only listened to me, that would have been in the ocean. Exactly in the same way that there's so many hooks in life. Sometimes there's a hook of drug. Sometimes there's a hook of woman. Sometimes there's a hook of extramarital affairs. Sometimes there's a hook of fraudulent activities. Sometimes there's a hook of our ghussa and our anger. Sometimes there's a hook of hirs and tama. Sometimes there's a hook of greed coming in us. These are all different type of hooks. And when it is told that don't pursue that nafs and your desires, you'll get hooked up in that. And when people don't listen, it's only when they get hooked up they understand what is the consequence of that. So sometimes we also need to listen. Just to conclude, that there was one person, he came out from college, he was a junior, and now he's about to go into the world. He thought, there are many experienced people in my field, I should probably consult with them and ask some advice. So he went to his senior professor and he told that, I want some advice from you. So the senior professor told, no problem, you can come and join me for a cup of tea. So when joining for a cup of tea, the senior professor was serving the tea. And he started pouring the tea. Now the tea, the cup, it can take a certain limit. Kept on pouring the tea. Over the limit, the tea started spilling over on the saucer, and from the saucer onto the tray. That junior professor thought to himself, I came here for advice from this person, he can't even pour a cup of tea properly. What advice is he going to give me? So they were signs of discomfort on his face. The senior professor asked the junior professor, why are you feeling uncomfortable? He said, yeah, but the tea is enough. Why do you need to pour so much? Because that it's being spilt over, there's no space for it, that's why it's being spilt over. So the senior told to a junior, you came here to get advice from me, this is exactly my advice. There's sometimes that you need to keep space in your heart and your mind, empty space for our advice to go inside there. You see this cup, there's no space in it, that's why it overspilled. So if you already condition your mind not to listen, whatever advice I'm going to give you, going to spill over. And sometimes we think we know it all. Whereas, at times, that when we think we know it all, that is the beginning of our destruction and our disaster. And just to conclude, that there were some youngsters, they were sailing on a boat. So, one probably, they were obsessed with their secular education. One was probably very good in science, one was good in mathematics, one was good in geography, one was good in something else. So that poor sailor, normally a sailor, what does he know? He just knows how to sail, how to move the boat, and meet all the challenges of the ocean. So they started talking to each other, that what are you studying, what are you studying, what are you studying, what do you know? So they asked the poor sailor, what do you know? He said, no, I don't know nothing, I know how to make this boat move. And if anything has to happen, then at least, I can cause this boat to come to the ocean or to come to the end of the shore. So the youngster, they told him, looks like you hardly studied anything. Look at us. We studied in college, we studied in university, and you didn't study anything. You wasted half your life. That poor sailor kept quiet. He didn't say anything. Suddenly a huge wave came. And now the sailor asked them, you know how to swim? He said, no, we don't know how to swim. So, okay, if I wasted half my life, you wasted your entire life. So that's it. Sometimes we should never think that we know it all. We will inculcate this one quality of listening in us. And when we listen, that is a stepping stone for our ruhaniyat, our tarqi, our closeness to Almighty Allah Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.